Welcome back to another episode of Practice Underwater. I'm here today with my co-host, Dr. Macarino. How's it going, man?
It's good. Another chance to talk to you one-on-one. I always enjoy this time, so let's get into it.
Yeah, so guys, we're coming up on the end of 2020, which I don't know, for me went much differently than I had expected. I'll put it that way.
I think you can say it went differently than they expected.
And so we thought the last two episodes of 2020, we really wanted to take a minute and reflect both on the full year that we just had, and that's what we're going to do this week. And the next week, we're going to look forward to 2021. And to be honest, I think it's an activity that we'd like you guys to do internally yourselves. And so we're going to do it on air. And then you guys, I think it'd be a good idea for everyone to reflect on their 2020, because I think this is going to be one of those years that we all circle as a year that I would think a lot of us changed our lives. I mean, I don't think you can leave 2020 and enter it the same person. At least that's my experience of it. So, Matt, do you agree with that? Do you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, it changed everyone. Some more than others. Some were directly affected by the results of the virus, either themselves or loved one. Others, it's just, their practice did a turn, closed for 2-3 months. And, for you and I think a lot of our paths completely altered in the course of everything. So, yeah, it's a wild year, really.
What virus? You mentioned a virus.
Haven't heard of it?
Yeah, I heard about the. I will. Oh man, I was about to put a pretty funny joke in there that'd be pretty offensive, so I think I won't.
Yes, you please shouldn't. I had an interview on Practice Underwater a couple months ago where the guest's spouse was very seriously affected and on kind of death's door. Extremely sad, and kind of puts into perspective that those of us who are lucky did not have something like that in our lives. That it is really happening out there.
Yeah, no, and I think at this point, most of us know somebody that has been affected by, COVID-19. And, so yes, I think it's, when we talk about it, it's interesting because you have to talk about it two different ways. You talk about the virus itself, and we're not necessarily talking about the virus itself. I think we're more talking about the impact it had on our lives and the world in general. So I want to make that distinction, not to be insensitive to anybody. So thanks, Matt, for bringing that up. It's something good that I need to talk about more often, probably.
Yeah. So George, talk about you going into 2020. What were your goals? What was your vision for the year, and how did that shake out?
Okay. So if you guys didn't hear a webinar I gave a while ago, I'll kind of quickly catch you up to speed. So 2019 for me was a tough year. So I bought my practice in August of 18. And 2019, I had a really tough year for me, but we finished at about 145 in collections. And I had told myself, and it's funny because when I sit down and actually hear myself say this out loud again, it sounds insane. But I remember, I was sitting there in December of 2019, a year ago, and I said, okay, my goal next year is to collect 2 million. And coming off the year I had where, in December we collected 109. So, I mean, we were in no position to really think. I mean, I was sniffing the 130s, monthly if I had a good month, 120, so 140, somewhere in there. But, I really innovated what we call the shared practice philosophy now. I think it really began in my practice in June of 19. And by the time December had rolled around, I was seeing the momentum, both in my metrics, everything was clicking the way I'd wanted to. My new patient flow was my new patient quality, my retention, everything was where it was supposed to be. And so looking forward to 2020, I said, okay, I think we can get 2 million. I think that's a kind of a BHAG number for us, which is big, hairy, audacious goal. And so do I talk about where I'm at today, Matt, or do we not talk about that yet?
Whatever you want, man.
So through the end of November, we've collected 1.91.
Nice.
And so with COVID, which I never saw coming, with COVID, I thought 2 million was a stretch. Obviously, without COVID, I didn't see COVID coming in December. But 191 is where we're at. So we'll probably finish. I'd guess about 2.1.
Wow.
We'll probably hit. So that's something I'm really, really proud of. And it happened in a much different way than I ever could have expected. The way my schedule was looking at the beginning of the year was I was going to be working 3 days a week. My associate was working 4.5 days. And that was going to be a stable 160, 170 a month, kind of carry me throughout the year, me working 3 days a week clinically. That's what I thought was going to happen.
What actually happened, George?
We're going into it?
Yeah,
okay.
Go for it.
Okay, I guess it's my turn, and we'll go back to you later.
Yeah.
So January, February, we did well. And then March was going to be, so anytime you have a change in a practice, it takes about 3 to 4 months before you see like a production, do the case acceptance and all these things that kind of take time to materialize. And so March was going to be our first month breaking 200K in a specific month. And then COVID hit. And then I got a month off. And you give me a month off, that's a lot of
A
time for
lot of
George to
time.
think.
A lot of time to think.
That was not very good for me returning clinically. And so one of the big things that came for me during COVID was clinically, I realized, you know what? Like I kind of had this idea in my mind that I wanted to be a 3-day week productive dentist. And then I realized that the only reason I wanted to do that is because I felt like I was supposed to. It's kind of like the model. It's like you're the productive owner who's not there very much and producing a lot on the days that you are there. And then you have an associate to kind of produce as well. But what I had realized during COVID is like, I'm actually much happier not going into the office than I was going into the office. And so what I decided to do instead was I decided to hire a full-time associate and then replace myself and then only see patients just for like a couple hours a week. And so, and it's funny. I'll talk about it, I guess, next year, but I'll just talk about it now. I'm actually going to every other week. I'll go in on Wednesday afternoons.
So when is it going from every other week to every once a month?
So it'll go from every other week, because every other week makes a lot of sense. I've realized that, I can prep a crown, seed a crown. So like, I don't need to be there every week. It's just every other. And then I can time my appointments, that way. And so anyway, but for the rest, it's been 4 months now that I've been non-clinical. And I mean, I'll talk about that later, but it's been incredible. I never saw it coming. I thought that I'd be finishing out the year barely hitting 2 million, working 3 days a week with one associate. And looks like we're going to hit 2.1 with a pandemic that I did not see coming. And me working 3 hours a week and looking forward to next year working every other week for 3 hours.
Talk about like what that time has freed up for you, maybe creatively or in other areas.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember what I told my staff, and I don't know if I told the story on the podcast. I think I told on Dental Friends with Benefits, but when I sat down to tell my team what I was doing, which by the way was probably the most nervous I've ever been to tell them something, because they were all, think about it. We came back in May, and I was there like, I really did not want to come back. So I came back. I'm like, it's slow. I'll just be there 1 day a week. And then June was super busy. And they were like, come on, like our associates booked out like 4.5 weeks. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'll come 1.5, 2 days maybe. And then at that time I had found the associate I was going to hire. So then I sat them all down and I told them that I'm going to go down to half day a week. And then my assistant was like, what are you going to do with the other like 4.5 days and the weekend?
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of time that like you don't have anything else. And I told her, I'm like, I have no clue. I don't know. But all I know is that what's best for me and what's best for the practice are the same thing. And it's me not being here. And it's funny because now, like Matt, my personal financial situation well, and how good of a move that was for me to do that. But at the time, it was extremely scary because it went from my production was my income essentially because my break even was hit by my associate to it being me taking away the only way I've ever known how to like make predictable money. And so it was a kind of a really big leap of faith that I really didn't know what was going to come. I just knew that it was the right thing for me personally. And then I think what's come from it is, a lot of creative space and being able to move a lot faster in, both shared practices. And then, we'll talk next year about kind of some things that we have coming up. And so, it's like now I don't even have time to practice clinically. I mean, if I ever wanted to, my schedule's so full with non-clinical activities. So, I'm thrilled about it. It's funny because early on, I overcompensated. And when I made that decision, I told my team, I am going to be here every week seeing you guys, checking on you guys. We are going to have a departmental meeting every week during lunch that I am going to sit in on to make sure I'm involved in everything so you guys don't feel like I've abandoned you. And then we're going to do a happy 2 hours per month. We're just going to sit and bond. And then quarterly, we're going to have a whole team meeting. Like I threw everything I had at making sure that culture would stay when I left. And what happened over the course of 4 months, it's like I would equate it to like teaching your kid how to ride a bike. It was like at first I really did not believe in my staff's ability to handle this. And August, my first month not being there, was probably the most issues I'd ever had in the office. And then what happened over time is they're like leaders in the practice stepped up. And I remember one day, very specifically in November, I walked in and I was late to the departmental meeting I was supposed to sit in on. And my office manager had me lunch. She got me lunch, and I walk in, and they're like 40 minutes into this meeting, and my lead dental assistant is just killing it. They're running, so we run traction style meetings from EOS, and they're going over the issues list, and she's getting action items, and they're following the to dos from last week, and then they did the takeaways, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I almost missed this meeting. I contributed absolutely nothing, and it went way better than any meeting I've ever led because it's on track.
And you're like,
And
why do I need to be here?
yeah, and I realized I probably don't need to be here. So then I told my office manager that day, I said, okay, so from now on, I'll come for the last 15 minutes of the meeting, just say hi to everyone. And then you get me lunch. So she buys me lunch every week. Well, I mean, the office buys me
Of
lunch.
course.
And then I sit with my office manager and I'll hear the takeaways from the meeting and I'll just kind of say hi to everyone who was in the meeting. Then they go back to work. And then my office manager, I just chat for a little bit while I eat lunch. And then I'll see patients, for a couple hours, hour and a half ish. Then I'm out. And I trust them now so much more than I ever did before. And, I might get a call from my office manager every other week. Usually every other week, I'll get a phone call with her about some type of emergency. But other than that, they pretty much don't need me. And it's a really good feeling, and something I'm really proud of my team for. It's to have them be able to handle the day-to-day operations. I mean, it's funny. We fired 2 people last week, or this week actually, maybe last week. In the last week, we fired 2 people, and we have this new assistant, and she was like, it's kind of unnerving. Like, I've been here for like 2 weeks and you guys have already like fired 2 people. Like, am I next? And it's funny because my team hires and fires without me now. So the speed at which we can do that is much faster because and I come in, they're like, oh yeah, we fired blank. And I'm like, oh, cool. Nice job, guys. They just hire and fire and do what they need to do. And, they have leeway and they know that I trust them. And, we kind of talk about things big picture and they know where we're going. But the day-to-day stuff, they really they interviewed an assistant, offered her a job while I was there. And I wasn't involved in that at all. So I'm really, really proud of them.
Yeah, I want to highlight that and echo it. Like the feeling of being proud and gratitude you get when you empower your staff and then they surprise you. They go above and beyond what you even expected is the coolest feeling as a boss and leader. Like that they really get it and I'm not as needed. And it's literally like your little kid. No more training wheels.
Yeah, it's funny because, on one hand, you're like, oh my gosh, they don't need me. Like, you want to be needed.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think Alex Sharp has helped me with this. He's helped me realize that, it's still because of me. Because, right, like you're the boss. You want it to be your show.
No, I mean, I don't share that. I don't want to be needed. No, I don't want them to. They called me a couple times today on my day off. I was like,
yeah, a couple times in one day is a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's funny. I was telling the story yesterday in the office, but my office manager called me yesterday morning. I was in the shower, and Matt has experienced this before. If I get like right now, Matt, you called me at the same time. I ignored your call.
Oh, wow.
In the shower, but I answered hers because I get a call from her like once every other week.
It's
so
important.
When she calls, it's usually something that I got to answer. And so I'll stop whatever I'm doing. I turned off the shower, took the phone call, and but it's funny because like that's when you get it that infrequently, it's like you walk in, you're like, wow, you guys are like really okay. Like this thing isn't burning down. Like, interesting. I don't know. It's been a very eye-opening phenomenon for me to be able to build a self-sustaining business that doesn't require me. Like,
do you foresee any challenges or anything you have to do differently as you move into the bigger space in what is it, a year and a half?
Yeah, so that's a pretty big thing. So I've talked about this before, and this was a recent Practice Underwater interview. So sorry if a lot of this is repetitive, but for everyone who hasn't heard these things, I think it's helpful. So 3 million for me was my 2021 goal. I've set it on air, and I've had to take it back because I push so hard to grow my practice, and I realized that 3 million for us, we can do it, but there's nothing I can do there's no more investing in growth. There's no more adding providers. Like we have 5 hygienists, 2 dentists, 5 assistants. Like we've got the whole team. Like we can't fit any more people in 8 ops. And, we technically could fit another half dentist somewhere. But do I really want to do that and strain out my team just so I can hit 3 million for my own trophy purposes? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, 2021 and for the next 18 months, it looks a lot like I've actually significantly cut my marketing budget for the first time because I don't have to market. We're getting 50 to 60 new patients a month of high quality without doing anything. So I don't need it. I can't have any more. And so we just are we're spending the next 18 months until we move into the big space. So I've now put my practice on a budget, which for me is something that
wow.
I'll talk about that a little bit. But I put my whole team, not my whole team on a budget, but I took, we have a supply budget now. We have, I'm very dialed in on my expenses for the first time because now I've had a 4-month period of stability where I can see what 2 doctors, 5 assistants, 5 hygienists, 4 front office look like. And so I've been able to actually dial in my expenses and set them up for 2021. So I set my practice up for 2021. I set myself up for a draw next year. So I pay myself predictably, which is something I don't typically do. And and then what we're working on in the practice is just tightening up our systems because we have the next 18 months to get our hiring processes, our training processes, the way we do things. We're switching to open dental in anticipation of the move. All of these things we're doing, and with the idea in mind that when we move to the new location, we can then put our foot on the gas again, but we'll do it from a place of a solid infrastructure of management and leadership roles. And, we know how we're going to continue to grow.
So no more split shifting in the new location?
No, split shifting will stay.
Staying. Gotcha.
Yeah, no, I'm not getting away from that. It's amazing.
Well, that's good. It's going to be your stability and like you can just take a breather, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and right, like the what got me here is not going to get me there saying that I butchered many times on the show. What got my practice to double since I bought it in collections, or more than that, isn't going to get me to where I need to go now, which is I need a period of stability in my practice. My team needs a period of stability. And so naturally, I think, Matt, your experience of working with me might be insightful here, but a period of stability isn't something that me being very involved in a business is good for.
Yeah, I didn't make that connection of you not being so involved anymore and the business
can just
be at ease.
Yes, that is the way it's going to be, because if I'm there, like I can't sit in the stability.
Yeah, you can't turn it off.
I have to exit. That's the way for things to become stable. So we've learned this over time, and the parts of our company that are stable are the parts of the company of which I exit, and the parts of our company that need me to grow them is where I am. And same thing with my practice, right? It doesn't need me to grow it right now because it's physically constrained until we move. So until then, I need to be as absentee as possible because otherwise bad things will happen. So I'll give a little update on the Mustang. So that's the one marketing thing that we're doing right now. I bought a car and we're raffling it off at the end of 2021. That has actually, we've been measuring our referrals have gone up a lot. I think we've increased by 50% or so. So like an additional 8 or 9 new patients a month coming through with referrals.
That's great.
Which I wasn't expecting. So
for the money you spent on that, like totally worth it.
Yeah. $800 a month is what it came out to be. So, really excited about that. We doubled. So we doubled about approximately the number of referrals we get per month now, where it used to be like 10 referrals a month and now we're getting about 20. So, and I'd imagine that as 2021 carries forward, we'll probably get more referrals from that. So the obnoxious decision to buy a sparkling red Mustang convertible to raffle it off to one of my patients, seems to be, and what I told my hygienist, I said, the reason I did that is so that you guys would have an excuse and a reason to talk about referrals with patients.
Right.
It's like, you can't avoid and now I make them park it in front of the office. So I don't have the car in my garage anymore. Thank goodness. My team drives it around and they park it in front and they rotate whoever drives it. And patients walk in, they see this obnoxious red Mustang in the car with our license plate. That's our URL. And then they walk in, they see the sign that we're giving away the Mustang. They see the obnoxious gold raffle drum. And then they go in and the hygienist, has it on the room. So it's like, it's a part of our office now. And the whole point is to increase the number of patients that come in for regular cleanings and get more referrals. So shout out to the random guy that I listened to once on a podcast, I forgot where, that talked about that idea.
And I've driven that car around a few times. It's a sweet ride. It's fun.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it. It's a man's
So,
man car.
so, so my staff has been driving it. They've been going through it. Like, I guess there's apparently like lipstick in the car. There was like this really girly CD in the CD player, and then there was this like flowery license plate like plate thing, and they're like, are these your things? I'm like, no, these are not my things. Okay, I was just trying to buy a red obnoxious convertible for business reasons. Okay. My accountant, shout out to my accountant, did not let me write that off as a business expense.
Yeah, you told me. Man, if you want to riff on accountants a little here, we can get into it.
Um
or we can hold off.
I love accountants. Not.
Got him.
No, I can't stand the and I get they have a purpose, right?
Yeah.
But you think of everything I dislike about people, rules, and like, very like they're very
industry standard.
Yes, very industry standard, very pass based.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, well, the last 12 months rolling, you're, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, well, like that doesn't matter because look at the next 12 months, and they're very caught up on the past and I'm very caught up on the future. So naturally and then I hate it when, people try to tell me what to do, and with taxes, like that's their job. So yeah, naturally I have an adversarial relationship with just about every account that I'll work with. So solution upcoming for that one, but
yes.
We'll see.
Well, good, man. That's a great 2020 given all the circumstances, and sets you up for such a great 2021. That's really awesome stuff.
Before we get back to the episode, I wanted to take a minute and thank Practice by Numbers. Without their help and allowing us to set up the shared practices dashboard, a lot of what we do on Practice Underwater wouldn't be possible. I want to take a minute and highlight a clip from the episode that we did with Rohit, where we highlighted some of the metrics that really matter most. I personally really like the dollars scheduled metric, because I always like to see, am I growing? Am I kind of, in which direction are we going? We should be at least scheduling more than we're producing, because usually some patients drop off. So I think that's kind of a good place to be. And so when I have a client and they just had a bad month and they're feeling down on themselves, I can always look at their dollar schedule to see which way are they trending. Are they going to have a big month next month? Like, can they cheer themselves up knowing that they're scheduled in a growth trajectory? Or are they ultimately, I need to say, hey man, you got an issue. I know you just had a good month, but you're setting up yourselves up for a couple bad months. And, then they can turn it around. But I think having that heads up holds you accountable as a business owner, where you're not relying on how much money did I make this month. And that's how I know, how things are going. I think you have the heads up one way or the other. I hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you guys are interested in trying out Practice by Numbers and looking at your practice through the shared practices dashboard, and there are many other dashboards, you can go to practicebynumbers.com and set up a free trial.
I went through the whole list of things that I had to talk about in 20 minutes. What do you have? We were supposed to do this at the same time. We were both supposed to talk about what we thought 2020 would look like. And we're going to talk.
It's easier this way. Just tell the whole story and then we can switch over.
All right. So Matt, I think you had almost like your best year was 19, right?
Yeah. So 19, we did 1.65. That was about 150K more than the prior year with the seller. And on fewer days, he was 6 days. I went down to 4 and a couple Saturdays a month. But it was a period of like a lot of turmoil in the practice, a lot of staff turnover, a lot of like negativity and strong personalities. So it was good on paper. It was tumultuous for me. So I was really looking forward to 2020 being the year that I kind of stabilized while I was still growing. And part of that, I had finally had my team that I loved. Like I finally had my people on the staff that I knew were team players and were going to move us forward. And we just brought our second full-time hygienist in February. I freaking love this hygienist. And then February comes and we have our first like easy, probably was like 145 month. And where I didn't do any big cases, I didn't do anything crazy. I wasn't personally slammed. I was like, oh, this is what it's like to have 2 hygiene. going, and I don't have to kill myself, and we're great. Of course, COVID hits. New York, friggin' first the bullseye on New York. The first case was like 10 minutes from my house. So, I mean, that threw me for a loop. We were shut down till mid-June. And even coming back, like getting patients back in the door has been tough. Even to this day, like tough to get people back. But that period allowed for a lot of like personal growth for me. So I was just down to like a half day a week for emergencies at the practice, and it led to a lot of creative time at Shared Practices. It was the birth of our mastermind program. It was creating the group coaching program. It was a lot of things that moved Shared Practices forward that I just really enjoyed that time to create something on my own and not being hamstrung by 4 days of grueling work at the practice.
And you had like what? How long were you off for? You can't tell your story in 2 minutes, Matt.
No, I wasn't done. I got more coming.
But how long were you off for? So
we closed March 16th, and then funny story. So I went on my honeymoon. I came back.
Oh, yeah.
I came back from New Zealand. all on a high of 2-week honeymoon. Beautiful. Went to Fiji first, then New Zealand. New Zealand's the best country I've ever been to, and maybe in the world. That is a nice country. People are amazing. Food is nice. The scenery is like you wouldn't believe. Highly, highly recommend. So we're loving life. We get back, and that was March 9th or 10th. So everyone knows what those days mean. So I'm back in my office 1 week later. So I probably worked 3 days after that.
So you pretty much took off from the middle of February to when?
To March 9th, I think I got back.
No, but like after like COVID, when did you come back? June? You came back middle of June, right?
Yeah, so we closed March 16th, and then we came back June 10th. So almost 3 months.
Yeah. That's more than 3 months if you count the February break.
Yeah, it was a long time away from the practice.
That's a fourth of your year gone.
Right.
And I just looked at your PBN, and you'll finish this year like
I was hoping you had that number. What is it?
Do you want to know what you'll finish at?
I think it's around 1.2, 1.3.
You'll finish over 1.3 likely.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So closing for a fourth of the year.
Yeah.
You finished at over 1.3 when your seller did 1.5.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm telling you, when it was like I have an older patient population. Like everyone in New York's very COVID conscious with good reason, in a lot of ways. I think it's kind of been proven now that the dental office is not a place of spread, but I don't think I need to lecture our audience on that. But yeah, 1.3 is I'm very proud of that number. But I want to jump back a couple of steps of kind of what happened when I did come back in June.
Okay.
So you go from that 4 months basically, or whatever.
Well, I want to talk about the 3 months off.
Sure.
You were, Matt, you killed those 3 months off.
I loved it. Let me tell you, loved that time off. I mean,
were you happy or were you wanting to go back?
No, I did not want to go back. I mean, it was two sides of it. I didn't believe dental offices should be closed. So I was very annoyed by that. Our governor, I won't go into my thoughts on him. But
they're full of admiration.
Full of admiration. Wonderful man. You should read his book. It's out now. So there was that at play. Like I was frustrated that we couldn't open, but I was still really enjoying the time off. Like I got back into working out. I had a home gym that I built, which was like the best thing ever. I connected a lot with my wife and got into cooking and did all the shared practice stuff I mentioned. That I loved it. I've never had that time like that in my life. Where I feel like every time I've had like a month off or something, maybe waiting for a license or after dental school, it was full of angst. And this had a little angst in it, but I was able to really like blossom during this time. And it was amazing.
So behind the scenes look at Matt's schedule was the night before, Matt would sit there and block his entire day the next day.
Well, see, that's not totally accurate because I would block the week at the beginning of the week. So I may make some
even worse.
Yeah, right. So I may make some modifications the night before. But yeah, no, I had my workout time. I had my, breakfast time. And then I probably had some creative time because I'm my smartest in the morning. Afternoon, I might have some phone calls, some meetings, and then cooking dinner. And then that's your day. I mean, That's living the good life right there.
So Matt and I, at this point, we both have days where Matt, you have days where where you're not in the office anymore and you're at home, kind of simulating quarantine type stuff.
Mhm.
And the way that he approaches his days is he blocks them and schedules them, even when the activities don't involve anyone else other than Matt.
Of course.
There is still a busy schedule. Do you follow the time intervals? So like from 8 to 9, creative time around this topic, you will follow it from 8 to 9?
Mostly. Mostly. Yeah.
I love this. This is one of my favorite things about Matt. Is that he's this rigid with his schedule. Like,
because otherwise I'm not reliable to do it, And like,
Yeah.
I just hate, I hate going on vacation without a plan. I hate doing even this episode. I was like, George, what's the plan for the episode? Like, I need a little structure in my life.
So I told Matt, we're going to talk part 1 about 2020 and part 2 about 2021. It's a 2-parter to end out the year. And then Matt said, no, we need a plan. So our plan was, we're going to start with what we thought 2020 was going to look like.
We're doing the plan, so I don't think they need to know what the plan is.
Well, they need to know the plan because they didn't see what's next on the plan. The next start is a reaction to COVID. We have not talked about a reaction to COVID. So I think we need to address that at some point in the episode.
Okay, good.
And then we'll talk about coming back. So I think we're now in the story where you came back from COVID. Yes. So
right.
Can we...
So we're back. Okay. So mid-June, I'm back at the office, my same 4 days. And I don't know when along the road that I realized that this is what I was not meant for. Like, do you, and I don't know, I'm asking you, I don't really remember. Do you remember a time where I was like, I can't do this anymore?
Yeah, I remember. I thought you were going to ask me about my own experience, but no, for you, I remember I remember you coming back and saying, I'm pissed I'm back. I remember that was like a big sentiment you were having. And then I think it was, I took off in August, and then I think either we hung out at a specific time or we connected, or I think we saw each other. Oh, in Monterey, right? Didn't we see each other in Monterey?
Yeah.
And I think it was post Monterey. You went back to your practice and you're like, I can't keep coming back on Mondays after doing shared practices stuff. Like, it's getting to be too hard.
Yeah. So like August, September, we had our coaching department going, we had Mastermind had been launched, and it had gotten to be a lot. And I found myself less and less present at the office. I was just not, I wanted my schedule to be light. Like I just really just didn't want to be there. It was another example, like George, of the office was better without me. And I strongly believe it has been. So the original plan was go from 4 days to 3 days, and that was going to be good. Okay. Now I'm that like productive dentist in my 3 days. I'll do my specialty stuff and what have you. And I sit with that for a couple of weeks, and I'm like, 3 kind of seems like 4. Like, there's not really that much difference. So, right? Like, you would agree. It's about the same.
I 100% actually, I will say this. When I went from 4 to 3, that I would say there was no bigger difference in the number of days shift than, because from 3 days, you now have more days off than you have on. Mm-hmm. So I will say 3 to 4 is a big change.
Yeah. 4 to 3 is bigger than 5 to 4. I think.
Yes.
Like that's
4 to 3, I think, is the biggest single 1 day change. I will say that. That being said, though, it's still like primarily your job is to go in and do dentistry.
Definitely. So at that point I was like, I remember telling George this. I was like, 2 days sounds better. Like, I don't know why, but like, that just seems like, okay, now I'm like very part-time and more full-time shared practices. So end of September, I found my associate, and kind of had that weird couple months, George, you alluded to earlier, of like the expenses are off. A lot of the stuff was breaking at the office with patients and with just everything, staff. Like, it was kind of a messy start. Whereas now, as we talk in the beginning of December, it's really started to stabilize. Patients have really taken to the associate, and she's doing a really nice job, and staff love her. And it's such a weight off my shoulders that when I'm there, a day and a half, I can be present. I could be into it. I do like still get into the clinical dentistry when it's that short amount of time. It's just one full day. Like, I can do anything for a day. It's really set us up well. I think going into next year, we're starting to get our expenses in line. I think by the beginning of the year, we'll get back to being really profitable and smooth sailing. And I guess we'll talk 2021 at our next episode, so I won't go into my goals there, but.
I kind of talked about mine. Maybe we'll talk about 2021 for us right now, and then we'll talk about shared practice next episode. Seems like a better thing.
So the goal next year, Sorry, it's actually what was on the plan, so we're good. So goal for me, like the goal this year was 2 million. That's the goal next year. We're still going after it. And I'm invigorated by that. I'm invigorated by working on the business more than being in the business. And we've launched the magazines that we are a big proponent of here. So those have hit, and yeah, no, I'm more jazzed up about the practice than I have been in a long time.
Yeah, and I think for you, it's I want to explain this because I think we've both referenced it. So expenses versus production. Oh man. So we have had, well, I've had most likely the most volatile 2-year practice ownership of any person of a practice doing $2 million. I will find me another one, please. Find me a practice that has had 7 dentists in 2.5 years, and I will, and then I'll be wrong.
You'll
but in the meantime, that's me. So
this part is no one can answer, so you're going to be right.
No, but I mean, I challenge the audience occasionally. Mm-hmm. I also will say, for Richard's sake, I believe his episode has aired. He find me some by the time his military experience is done. The number of practices he will have purchased, we will not say it yet.
Wait, I don't know. I don't think it has aired yet.
It has not aired. Okay, so
well, actually, as they're listening to it, it's going to be aired.
Okay, so I won't talk about Richard's stuff, but Richard already buying 3 practices in the military. Find me someone else that's done that.
Nope.
And wherever Richard finishes, like, find me someone else that's done that. And I think in my case, the 7 dentists in 2.5 years in my practice are really 2 years and 3 months. Like, that's a lot of instability. And there's been a lot of periods where we had 2 dentists, a lot of periods where I was by myself, a lot of periods where my associate was by herself because I was lazy. And like, there was always a period where we never had stability. And so what happens is your expenses are not predictable because you don't have a stable business. And so my first time having stable expenses was really not August, because August, my second associate started. So it wasn't until September that I paid bonuses on what they produced in August. So it was really like September, but then that was a weird month. And then October, November were COVID months, the COVID follow-up 6-month months. So, it's really hard to gauge your expenses. But that being said, I feel like we have a good idea of where our expenses lie now. And moving into next year, I think we have to dial them in. And I think Matt and I are kind of both in the same place. I mean, he has a smaller practice, so he's going to have less moving parts than me. I have a much bigger team, more stuff, and I had more chaos. So, but at the same time, we both of us are in the same place where we're really looking through our December. So now we have, do you guys take a week off in December, Matt?
No, I try to be open as much as possible in December. It's always our busiest month.
This is the last year. Sorry, team listening. This is the last year that we're taking off.
Yeah, don't take that week off.
I told them that I wanted to do it when I took over, and then I've next year we're going to be open the 27th, 28th, 29th, and we'll be closed the 30th, 31st. So we'll give them like an extra day right before New Year's. But you're shaking your head at that too.
Well, no, like best time to take off, Labor Day. Like all the moms got their kids back in school. They all get like crazy in that time. Labor Day, summer's over, so no one else is traveling, so you can go somewhere and it's like not as many people, but it's still warm out. That's a week off every year.
Matt, but my practice doesn't take weeks off anymore.
I know. I'm just saying it for the listeners who don't have your type of practice.
Yeah, okay. So for listeners, work all of December.
Yes.
Take Christmas break in September.
Yep.
Yep. You're just agreeing with it.
No, I think December and January are strong for most offices in the country. Yes. I think it starts to slow mid-February, and February is a bad month. If you're in a cold weather city, that's the time you take a week off, February.
Okay. You heard it here first.
You're here first.
So now essentially where was I going with that? Oh, okay. So yeah, this month in December, we're only working 3 weeks. So we are closed from Christmas to the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. And next year we will not be doing that. But that being said, so December is not a good month for me. So I can look at November, October, September as 3 months now. I have a 3-month split of somewhat stable expenses. And so that has allowed me now to budget my practice for next year. So that's sort of, and I think you're kind of doing the similar activity where you got your associate at the beginning of October. So now you have October, November, and then you're working December. So you'll have December to look at. So I think it'll be really good.
I think I'm like a couple months lagging from you of when I can get that dialed in and figure out those numbers.
Yeah, but it's funny because like first you have to diagnose stuff, then you have to get on the schedule, then you have to do it, then it has to be sent to insurance, then you have to pay expenses. And it's like all of these, it's like a 4 or 5 month process before you can have like a stable P&L off of like some major change in a practice.
And like you and I both pay on adjusted production because we want that associate to have that immediate financial reward. So, but that does put us in that position where,
yes. So when you're losing the associate, it's fairly profitable, but when you're getting the associate, there's like a little bit of a lag period.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I think when we do that, so that's a good point. Matt and I pay on adjusted production because we want to incentivize, we want the time from closing the case. For me, I want to incentivize a conversation to convert treatment or doing the dentistry. Either one of those activities, we want it to be as close to financial payout for the associate as possible so that can be rewarded. If we did collections and it's like if it had a huge day or like did a big month, like they won't get it for like 2 or 3 months. And that's not, something that we want to reinforce with our associates.
I got to say, I've had now 3 associates. All have been kind of plug and play as far as like case acceptance, diagnosis, and filling their schedules like pretty consistently. I think it shows the co-diagnosis culture can be passed on to any doctor as long as they're at a certain standard.
Yeah, I mean, I think DSOs would beg to differ with us on that one because of the scale of which they've done it, But for our small practices where we get to hire associates and like, we each interviewed quite a few before we hire the ones, like when we have that level of control over the process. I mean, I would say that honestly, again, I've had 3 full-time associates. My seller was a 4th associate I've had. And I mean, it's not like, look, I'm not terrified of the idea of turning over a dentist. Like it's not a big deal. I've turned over, like we said, there are 2 dentists in my practice day to day. I don't know if I call myself, turned over or not, but there are 4 dentists.
You did a crown yesterday, not turned over
fully.
fully.
2 yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
2 patients? 2 different
no,
patients?
one guy.
One human patient. Okay.
This guy he's actually the second crown I've ever prepped in my life was on him in dental school. And he sought me out afterwards. And so guys like that, like him and I are really close. We're cool friends. So patients like that I will still see, but I really discourage them putting patients on my schedule. Ideally, I would like to go and have nothing on my schedule. That's an ideal day. They know to not put anything. And
this is big. This is now, I didn't mention it's for 2021. That'll become my Tuesday. So Tuesday I'm there from 9 to 1, and I wanted to get it so now the associate's coming in earlier at 9 instead of 11 when she starts, and they know not to put anything on that day for me.
Oh, good. Nice. There you go. So, and guys, like we're odd, we don't want this to become normal. I think if I'm listening to this and I'm a dentist that doesn't have an outside passion that's pulling me away from the chair, I think what I would take from this is I get to work the amount of days I want and it'll work. Like if George can pull it off in a half day every other week and Matt can pull it off in 1 day per week, then I can pull it off in X days per week because that's how many days I want to work. That's the goal. That's what we're trying to get you guys to realize, not necessarily, start a consulting company so you don't have to work in your office anymore. Like that's like, honestly, that's not it.
No, that's
not the lesson here. The lesson I think is to learn from our experiences that whatever you want is possible. I think you just have to be the first one to realize that.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that point, George. I just remember how much it impacted me to see someone going for what they want and creating the practice around their life and how that looked for them. And I just encourage anyone as getting into practice ownership to seek that out and try to emulate that, whatever it is.
Are you saying that I inspired you?
No, I wasn't pointing to you. No.
Okay.
I mean, you entered ownership after I did.
That's true.
But no, your show inspired me for sure. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, I think this has been a lot of fun. Matt, I do want to circle back to our reaction to COVID. That's the last thing on the bullet point list that we had here for this episode.
We must get to it.
We have to get to it. So
what do you mean by reaction to COVID? Like what is
like March 17th?
Oh,
how were you feeling?
So I saw the writing on the wall.
Okay, yeah. Tell us about this. You were like Mr. COVID predictor over here.
Oh yeah, I was following this in January. I'm big on Reddit. I think I mentioned this on the show. So I saw about this virus in China, and I was hearing about how poorly they were managing it, and I was like, this doesn't look good. So then when it goes to Italy, you're like, like it's coming. And then when it came to New York, I just knew we were about to be shut down. I knew it was going to spread like wildfire, and hindsight's 2020. But I really felt like at the very least, patients were going to be unwilling to come in. And it started happening right when I came back that they were.
What did you do to prepare for this?
I mean, what can you do? Like nothing. I mean, right? I was like telling my team, like, hey, like they're probably going to shut us down. They're probably going to shut us down in my week.
When were you saying that?
When I got back from the honeymoon, I was like,
okay.
But
early March.
I mean, like, what can you do? I mean, so yeah, it was incredible. I cannot believe they closed dental offices. I really can't get over that.
Well, I was in a seminar talking to a lawyer, and he had said that, and I don't want to like air stuff that I shouldn't in private conversations, but I would call it highly unlikely that a pandemic shuts down dentistry again.
Oh yeah, definitely not. I would 100% agree.
Yeah, I think the ADA, we all learned a lesson here.
ADA took a beating from the dentists.
Okay, good. I'm happy we're on the same page because
it took a beating.
That March 16th knee-jerk statement that they came out with was atrocious. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they're a lobbying group for dentists, and they didn't do a very adequate job at that.
No.
But at the time, I was very much for shutting down because I thought it was the right thing to do. I did.
No, and I think at the time we had very little information.
Yeah, so, it was just a lot of in the dark about what it was.
No one really knew what we were up against.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's obviously a dangerous virus. Like, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I think we had very little idea of the impact of certain decisions we were making, both for how much they would help or how much they'd hurt and all that stuff.
Yeah, it was just what wound up being a lot of misinformation about how it spreads and, the settings it spreads. And, they just didn't know at the time.
Yeah. And, what was I going to say, man? I was talking to one of the analytics guys, and he was saying that it's likely a 3-year recovery period for the average dental office in hygiene. I think for our clients, I think we're looking at more like 18 months because of our retention. But, in general, it's going to be like October, November was slow. Next March, April, slow. Yep. Like April, May-ish, whatever it is, slow. And it's going to be like that for likely. My projection is that October, November of 2021 will be like really close to normal. And
that seems about right.
So I think April, May will be pretty bad.
Yeah. I think my practice probably will be slow those months. I know we took like a 150 patient hit, kind of the effect of it was that, which at a smaller office makes a difference.
Yeah.
We've been able to like get around that, but yeah, I think a year from now we're pretty much back to full on hygiene wise.
And for us, I think the difference is, right, when you reappoint, the average reappointment rate for like a regular dental office is like mid-60s. For the PBN user, it's like, potentially low 80% reappointment rate. My office, we reappoint 93 to 94%. So you do that over 2 or 3 recare cycles, we're bouncing back much faster.
Right.
So I think and then, how much are you proactive or reactively retaining your patients as well? Like how much are you calling overdue recare and all that stuff? Mm-hmm. Those are going to be the things that lead to a faster rebound for you. And so those are things that we emphasize a lot. Obviously, our philosophy is very embedded in those principles and our clients do them. And so naturally, I think, the philosophy, retention-based philosophy is going to bounce back faster. So only thing I'll say, my reaction to COVID. Oh man. So Matt, I think people need some context about how I typically am able to block out like politics, news, world events. Can you give our audience a little context on what that's like? Just like interacting with me?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. George just lives with blinders on. He's in his own George world where he spends a lot of time thinking and actively keeping out what's going on around him. And so he insulated himself in this time when it first came out. So obviously he had some confusion as far as what was going on. And you could probably talk more about that.
So I did not realize. So I went to I was like vaguely aware of COVID pre March 17th, like vaguely aware as in people are starting to cancel, stuff like
Mhm.
that. I mean, the NBA got shut down. I was aware of those things. And then that weekend that blew up, I had a bachelor party. So I wasn't at all on the news, social media, nothing. I don't really respond to phone stuff. I was just enjoying myself. And then Sunday morning, my staff is like wondering if we're going in on Monday and all this stuff. And now I'm having to, for the first time in my adult life, I'm having to watch news, and I'm having to like be involved in like the world of politics and like what are we going to do? What's Congress going to do? The Senate and all of these things that I am so happy that I get to live back in my box now. Because I really do not enjoy that. I find the world itself is so negative, and I think like there's that saying of like you are the five closest people, the people that you interact with the most. I do believe that we are the five sources of information that we consume the most. And for us, that's whether it be like this podcast, we're a source of information for you, then we're potentially changing your mindset in your life in some ways. But if you're listening to the news, like whatever station you want,
Whoa.
Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, whatever, like I don't want that to be one of my five influences on who I am as a person. And so I got to see that firsthand, and that was pretty frightening. So I'm happy now that I have yet to do that. I do like elections. I think elections are fun because it's like a sports game for me. So I did watch. Go
I
ahead.
have to jump in there, George. You really pissed me off when in that blinder time, and when COVID was blowing up. You really got to me.
Good.
Yeah, it did not sit well. How clueless you were about it, and like actively keeping out information.
Yeah, I don't do it.
Yeah,
And it's not for everyone. But for me, I think it's very important that I remain. And COVID is probably an exception where I shouldn't have done that, but it's just a time of my life. I have to live that way. So,
and boy, we didn't even touch on, and we don't need to get into it, of all the PPP nonsense we had to go through as dentists, and the EIDL, and what's the difference, and how do I apply, and when is it forgiven? Is it 8 weeks? Is it 24 weeks? Wow, that was a mess.
well, that was all changing so fast. Luckily,
Yeah,
has your
what a
been
mess.
forgiven? Mine has been.
I haven't applied yet. I'm doing it
Okay.
tomorrow at 2:30.
Oh, it's a book appointment on Matt's open day. Oh man, there you guys go. There you have it. Matt being ridiculous.
There you
Right,
go.
in front of your eyes. So next episode we have on the schedule our 2021 goals, what shared practices is up to in 2021, an update on the headquarters, and sort of what the next year looks like for us personally, professionally, in all ways. So hopefully this was a nice episode. And again, the purpose for us is we're taking time and we're reflecting on our years. Because this is a year that hopefully we don't experience very often on the many years in our lives. And so it's one that we want behind us. And moving forward, I think it'd be good if we all reflected, because while this year was tough and it presented many challenges, I'm so thankful for everything that it challenged us in, because of how much we grew, at least on our side, both Matt and I, and, everyone at Shared Practice because of it. I think we would not be the same without COVID, and we have to be thankful for the events that it led to in our lives. So, I'll leave it at that. Anything you want to add, Matt?
No, that was beautiful. We'll leave it there.
All right. We'll see you guys next week to forecast what 2021 hopefully will look like for us, and then you can do it for you.